Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about my first job as a software developer. So let's get into it. So the question in question was literally that. Frederick, how did you get your first job as a developer? Well, it was pretty straightforward actually. I went to a university here in Gothenburg, or like a school for software developers, and the education was basically Java development. And so the thing that I was doing was just Java, all of it. We were building web applications and things like that. And then after, say, the first semester or something like that, we started a course in on sort of understanding JavaScript and things like that as well, on top of the Java development. And so I started to looking into JavaScript, and one of my professors or teachers at the time, had mentioned this was when Node was sort of becoming a thing. This is why I can remember, guys, a time before Golang. And because before the competition was between, at that time, was Ruby versus Node. Everybody was on Rails and things like that. That was so cool. And now Node comes along, and that's even cooler. And then Go comes along, and it's cooler than Node. It's just, I wonder who's going to be the cool kid on the block next time. But anywho, so and my professor basically says that yeah, you should look into Node. This is going to be huge, basically. And I think even at that time, when I was just a student, I mean, this was in the days where I thought that if you made a class private, it meant that it was password protected. So yeah, I didn't know anything at all about software development. And oh, sorry, not a class, a property, private. Anywho, the so I start looking into basically Node.js development and so forth, and getting further and further into it. And this is where I feel like I've been a little bit fortunate, because if you have done Java, or if you've done backend development in, say, Java or C# or something like that, then you get a different way of looking at like JavaScript, because the thing is, as I've said, the communities look at things differently, and the things that might be right, or like things, there are a lot of things that you don't really have with you in terms of theory and so forth when you do Node.js development. There was a bit of a change here, because you don't have all of this framework and like all these libraries around you, but at the same which can be a good or a bad thing, but at the same time you also don't necessarily have any idea of how to structure a good backend API or something like that. So it was kind of cool, because I understood how much easier it was to work in JavaScript, like it was faster and so forth. But at the same time, I also learned how to work in JavaScript more and more. Even though I was doing primarily Java development. And so then after about like I think I have 6 months or something like that left on my education, it's time for us to start looking for internships and things like that. I reach out to, I literally go on Google, hey, development jobs Gothenburg, and then there was this tiny, or like fairly smallish or mid-sized agency type of thing here in in Gothenburg. And I connect with them. They reach out back because they had apparently a Node.js project and that they needed help with. So no Java, was all it was done in Angular and Node.js as a backend. I go and meet them basically, and they want I'm basically an intern, and they say, yeah, we can take you on as an intern, and then you're basically going to be alone on this project. They had this in-house application that they had built, which was basically a finance system for salary management and things like that. The original one was a Mac OS application that they created for desktops, and they wanted to port that to a web solution instead. And they had two interns from prior that had been working on this thing, that were now working at the company as consultants, but they had left that project behind and started working on other things. So now they wanted another intern to take over, which was me. And so they give me this project, and I get some support, I suppose, from a very nice guy, probably the nicest guy I've ever met, a socialite, software developer who's just he was just a great presence in every situation. And he helped me out, trying to get me sort of onboarded. But I mean, I can tell you now, guys, I was way out of my depth on that one. Because one part is because I've literally only done coding for in school and things like that. I didn't really have any like real knowledge of how to do these things, and then it's like Angular, which is new to me, and Node.js, which I sort of know a little bit, but I'm not an expert at by any means whatsoever. And then the code base is this thing that they haven't been working on for months, and it was basically a proof of concept. So, and now of course, for you who have done this before, that management thinks that, oh, it looks quote unquote correct, therefore it's production ready, right? Yeah, it's not really the case, right? So there's a lot of issues with that, basically. And I have tons and tons of anxieties and stomach aches and things like that. I like to say to these days that had I not been so hell bent on that I want to be a software developer and I want to make make a well, I don't want to say a career necessarily. I want to be, as I've said to you guys before, the universal programmer. I want to be the sort of person who has basically built everything. I can build almost anything or so forth and so forth. I really care about the craft itself. I would have quit. That's how rough it was for me in those days. And then after a while surviving, they take on... they merge my little project, or like this thing that we were working on, with another startup, and create a new startup from it, because two other guys were working on it, working on a different types of system that handles some parts of the whole finance things, or as you can imagine, small business finances and things like that. And so I get two new teammates. Basically, they are more experienced, or like they're or at least the programmer had been programming for 10 years, so that was a benefit to a certain degree. But the thing wasn't working all that well over time, I think, because in those early days they basically needed someone to produce and produce and produce. They didn't have any like real resources to train someone like myself. So I was very happy to say that after a little while the thing sort of just I got contacted by a recruiter for a different position at a much larger company, which at the end of it I took that job. I took that opportunity because it was becoming unfeasible for me to stay within that environment. They weren't happy with me, and I wasn't very happy with them either. So it was a real it was very educational, but it was a real shit show for the most part. I can tell you that much. So what I want you to take away from this was that my first job as a software developer, I wouldn't say it was all bad, but it was not good. Sucked really, really bad for me in those early days. From all perspectives, I was way now over my head, and it is what it is, right? But the way I got it was as simple as I've said to you guys before. You create yourself a CV, try to learn as much as humanly possible about the relevant tools that you might have in these. As I said, guys, just because you focus on, say, one thing or another doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to just stick with that language. And I've told you guys before, don't try to learn all the things, because you're not going to be able to learn all the things in the beginning of your career. But don't mentally commit to say that I'm just going to focus on, or that I will stick the rest of my career on you working in PHP or something like that, because you might get opportunities that are relevant within other languages. So being a little bit flexible is a good thing, even if you have to start somewhere. And the thing that I started with was Java, but I dabbled a little bit in Node.js as well, because I thought JavaScript, because I wanted to be a full stack developer. So JavaScript plus Java, that sounded really cool, right? That sounded great. And it was. And I mean, I still got to do Java work later on, but my first job was basically all Node.js and JavaScript development. And then it basically became, as I said, you send out a few applications. I got a few referrals in some cases and so forth for other things. Like I joined a little startup on the side just because my teacher found these guys who needed someone to help out with their iOS development, and so I did iOS with them, for example. And that got me into like something that I just did sort of for fun outside of work. But basically, it was that simple. You connect with some people. They might be looking for an intern. They might be looking for a junior, and so forth. And then you start working. And usually, as I said, guys, when you have a little bit of experience, it's usually easier to, like, the first job might be more difficult, and especially in these circumstances where you don't really have any support, it might be really rough. But that experience usually looks pretty good for the next employer. And then when I got into my second job, I was very fortunate. I got into to a place of work where I had the support that I needed, and my career just sort of took off from there, because in that environment I actually had peers and I had the sort of support structure that I needed. But the first job it's just the same as any job. Since, guys, you connect with people, you make sure that your CV is up to date, and you continue your learning process. Try to start with something small, like learn a stack so that you know how to produce. That's number one. Take it from me. I promise you that is more important than knowing all the tools. Just learn one stack really well, and then when you feel like you sort of know what you're doing, look at other things that might be relevant to enhance yourself. As I've said before, the onion. Like, start with a small kernel of stable tools that you know, and then start adding layers and layers and layers, and try to widen yourself a little bit, and then connect with companies and so forth, because usually that's, at least for my experience, that's usually all it takes. Have a great day.